We are seeing indie animation evolve before our very eyes, and I'm loving it. Whether you're an artist working in the industry, a YouTuber yapping about television, or a self-taught animator just trying to get by, it's never been easier to get your idea for an animated series out into the world. I mean, it's still going to take a lot of time and effort, which all vary on the resources you have and the scale you're trying to achieve, but hey, at the end of the day, you no longer have to go through the middlemen that are big studios to make the next big hit. All you need is a YouTube account and an upload button. We've been seeing so many indie pilots pop up over the last year, with a lot of them being met with immense success. Success that I don't think any of the creators anticipated. And with more pilots on the way, it's clear that this is just the beginning. And what's really amazing is that none of these pilots are alike. From concept to production, to tone to art styles, these are providing the kind of variety in animation that we haven't seen since the 2000s. So today, I wanted to give my thoughts on two of these pilots, highlighting the areas in which they really shine, and why I believe they're so successful, while also providing a healthy dose of criticism where necessary. Because I want these shows to be the best dang cartoons that they could possibly be. I also want to revisit the question of, is indie the future? While also checking in on what's probably going to be one of the most popular animated series of our lifetime, the Amazing Digital Circus. Because if you haven't been keeping tabs on it, you might not know just how huge this show's become. It's truly impressive. Oh, and by the way, please like and subscribe if you end up digging the video, and if it performs well, I'll probably take a look at more pilots in this format. Kicking things off, we have the pilot that's taking the internet by storm, Pretty Please I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl, created by Kiana Consmith. Following a girl named Aika who's abandoned her life of a magical girl in pursuit of normalcy, finding the prospect of attending an ordinary school and making ordinary friends exciting, befriending the aggressively average social outcast Zira, and evading the echoes of her past known as Eclipse and Lady Devoid. She can't get rid of her sidekick Hoshi though, they're in it for the long haul. In just under 2 weeks, this pilot has amassed nearly 3 million viewers, with no signs of slowing down anytime soon. And as someone who's been following Kiana's career for a bit, I couldn't be happier. She's always been an inspiring success story in my eyes. Hired at a relatively young age by Disney to be a storyboard artist on Big City Greens due to the art she posted online, gaining invaluable experience while continuing to cultivate an audience of her own, primarily from fan art of series like Pokemon. Although it was always obvious to me that people adored her fan art because they enjoyed her interpretations of various characters. It's not hard to look at her art and think, man, I'd watch an entire show that was like this. So when she started developing the idea for this pilot, sharing artwork and cute little comics online that were met with a ton of engagement, it wasn't all that surprising that I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl had an incredible turnout. It's clear that at this point, it's reaching a ton of people who haven't even heard of Kiana before, which is just incredible. On its face, the series is a subversion of the magical girl genre of anime. You know, shoujo like Sailor Moon. But in all actuality, this series is an exploration of burnout and falling out of love with your job. Aika's outlook on her job is a parallel to my own experiences as an artist in the animation industry. I grew up loving art and making art and always wanted to be a professional artist at some point. When I was hired at Disney, I had an amazing time and I loved it. But then there was a point where the industry just started to feel bleak. Work really started to feel like work, and I kind of lost sight of why I liked my job in the first place. I've since come around with the help of my friends, who was an inspiration for Zira's character. Being around people who are passionate helps bring that passion out of you. I hope Aika could come around in the same way as I did. Writing from life experience is vital to storytelling, as not only does it set your story apart by giving it a personal touch, but it helps give your story a clear end goal. In this case, we're likely going to see Aika's new best friend and love interest Zira help Aika rediscover her love for being a magical girl. The series will probably end once she does want to be a magical girl again. But let me put a pin in speculation to focus on what makes this pilot so damn great and how it's pushing the indie scene forward. The first thing you'll notice about this pilot is that aside from a few seconds towards the end, it's an animatic. No color, no frame-by-frame animation or rigs, no sequences that look like they were ripped straight out of a Disney movie. Just some old-fashioned storyboards with voice acting and sound design. I think the success of pilots like Has-Been planted the idea in a lot of people's heads that their indie pilot needs to be a full-fledged production that'll cost their entire life savings, or else it won't get any attention. So it's great that Pretty Please I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl has arrived into the scene to prove that's that's not always the case. Going with animatics is something I preached before on this channel, pointing viewers to the Becky Prim pilot that dropped in 2016, but since that came out almost 9 years ago with no major updates since, I think people weren't as confident in animatics making waves. If you believe in your idea and have a strong vision for it, people will be willing to give it a shot in any medium. One of the most popular forms of entertainment right now is manga, black and white comics that heavily rely on the reader's imagination for things like how the characters move, the inflections and deliveries of their dialogue, and overall ambience. And they don't always have the best art quality. One of my favorite manga is Chainsaw Man, and despite the art taking a dip, I'm still heavily invested in the story and characters, often rereading chapters the day they drop. People are willing to meet you and your story on equal levels so long as they're entertained and are connecting with it. So I hope this pilot leads to the creation of more indie animatics now that people are recognizing it's a viable route for success. From both industry professionals tired of the system failing them, and creative minds who may not have worked in animation yet, but have always dreamt of creating their own show. It's a lot cheaper and faster too. Kiana opened up about how it only took 6 months to produce I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl's pilot, 2 months to write, thumbnail, and board the pilot, which she did herself, and then it took 4 months to edit, record voices, add sound effects, and get additional art made for it. All of these steps presumably involving other people. Also, real life circumstances slowed down production a bit, so it could have been made even faster. Kiana went down the animatic route because she didn't want to e-beg for money, and recognizes that something on the level of Lackadaisy or Hell of a Boss just isn't feasible for everyone. I mean, now that the pilot's blown up beyond her expectations, maybe it's feasible for her now, but even if that's the case, it's still good that she started relatively small and did as much as she could on her own. There's a world where we didn't see this thing until next year, and who knows if the ever-changing algorithm would have pushed it as hard. Timing really is everything. And while we're talking about executing things on a smaller scale, I really appreciate how simple this pilot is, while still having a pretty big escalation. It's only 11 minutes, and there's a pretty straightforward plot for Aika going to school, befriending Zira, and having a little confrontation with Eclipse. They don't throw too much at you or drag anything out. You get just enough to become acquainted with these characters and walk away wanting to see more. I definitely think this could be the gold standard when it comes to pacing for future indie pilots. With all this said, Kiana's skill and experience in the animation industry definitely gives this pilot an edge. These boards are insanely clean and fairly detailed. It feels very alive in spite of the limited movement. My favorite shot has got to be this one after Aika saves Zira. Not only does it feel very expressive, but the foreshortening of Aika's hand and staff makes me feel like I'm looking at a really good manga panel. It's obvious manga influenced a lot of the boards in this animatic. Like, Zira's expressions are clearly influenced by Okarunes in the Dandadan manga, and this would have been boarded as the anime started airing back in the fall. The comedic timing is on point. I don't know how many of you watch Big City Greens, but that show's relentless with its humor, and you can tell working on it has definitely rubbed off on Kiana. It generally has the vibe of a Disney TVA cartoon. If it wasn't for the language, it definitely fit right in with the Owl House or Star vs. the Forces of Evil. We also can't ignore that this star-studded cast helped draw in an audience. Anairi's Kiones voices Aika, who you may know as the dub voice for Mirako in My Hero Academia, or Nessa from Pokemon. Bennett Ibarra voices Zira. That is Sailor Jupiter. Hoshi is Christine Marie Cabanos. Eclipse is Alex Lee. Lady Devoid is Shara Kirby. You even got Jessie from Team Rocket in here as Michelle Knotts plays the teacher, Miss. Now, I don't want people to think that you have to choose between a fully animated pilot or recognizable voice actors in order to have your pilot go viral. Again, most people who have seen this pilot at this point saw it because of the algorithm. The thumbnail caught their eye, it wouldn't leave the recommended, and they couldn't ignore that growing view count. But I still think the presence of these voice actors helped build a lot of momentum early on that signaled to YouTube that this was something worth pushing out to the masses. And it kinda goes without saying, but all the voice actors did a great job.
I'm kind of a loser.
That's bad.
I said, my name is Eclipse, Servant of Darkness!
I love the little subversions and jabs at anime tropes sprinkled throughout the pilot, like Aika realizing she's running for no real reason during her opening monologue, and instead of having a fancy transformation sequence that could be recycled in every episode, she has a fancy deformation sequence as she turns back to her normal clothes. That's actually really clever. These subversions aren't just for jokes though. I think they're being used to set up something really special between Aika and Zira. Instead of pursuing the approval of the popular kids like we usually see in these cartoons, Aika wants to be friends with Zira because of the fact that she's average and flies under the radar. It's actually really beautiful to think that she'll gradually fall in love with Zira as she continues to admire who she is as a person, flaws and all. When all of these magical girl shenanigans become overwhelming to Aika, she'll always have a sense of normalcy and stability with Zira. But at the same time, Zira's admiration of Aika will remind her why she became a magical girl in the first place, judging by Kiana's words about Zira's inspiration. Their relationship is definitely going to be a huge draw to the show. I mean, the Owl House didn't blow up until after Lumity was in the picture, so having these two in from the jump, the fan base is going to be huge. I want to see more characters in future installments. We got 6 in this pilot, which is definitely nothing to sneeze at. But between being a fan of Kiana's art and the seeds planted in this animatic, I just can't shake the feeling that there's some soon-to-be fan favorite characters that probably aren't even designed yet. Whether that be some recurring students around school who get caught up in the mayhem, or peers from Aika's past. At one point she alludes to others back home, which makes me think she was a part of her own magical girl group a la the Sailor Scouts that will meet down the road, and I just know the group cosplay is going to go crazy. The kind of color coordination we haven't seen since the Voltron days. I'm also really interested in seeing more villains. Lady Devoid already has my attention because, you know, hot cougar, Kevin Likey. But I really want to see the kind of rogues gallery Aika has. When it comes to criticism, I gotta be honest and say that the show feels a little confused tonally. A big part of that probably stemming from the fact that Kiana has been working almost exclusively in kids animation. I'm assuming the main demographic of the series is teenagers, hence the high school setting, and you know, teens are the primary age of anime fans. When you're a teen, you have all the time and energy in the world to binge anime. But this feels less of a teens cartoon, a la something like 16 or Fiona and Cake, and more of a kids cartoon that garners a fandom full of teens and adults. Like, I was caught off guard by that F-bomb in the cafeteria. Maybe the characters can look and sound just a tad older? Aika's 15, but she's 15 in a way where Steven Universe was 14 and had the pitch of a chipmunk. And he only looked and sounded that way because his powers literally held him back from aging like a normal person. But once the time skip happened and he was 16, his voice deepened and he grew a neck, both of which doing wonders in making him seem older. Aika and Zira look closer in age to the kids in Craig of the Creek, OKKO, or Gravity Falls, all of whom are under 13, as opposed to 15-year-olds in animation like the characters in Star vs. Kim Possible, Symbionic Titan, or Danny Phantom. I think Eclipse design probably fits his age the best out of the 3 teens. Although Aika does look more her age when she's transformed, probably because her boots make her taller and her hair is longer. I just think they could be taller. Maybe sound a smidge deeper, and it'd probably go a long way in not feeling like a kid show that just happens to swear. It's not a deal breaker, arguably a nitpick, but I thought it was something worth throwing out there. Still, Pretty Please I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl feels like it's on track to become another titan of the indie scene, and I'm excited to see what happens next. Whether if it stays as an animatic, takes the leap into full-fledged animation, or gets picked up somewhere, I'm confident that the adventures of Aika, Zira, and Hoshi are just getting started.
What we do here is go back.
Need something to throw on while you draw, study, or sleep? Roundtable Rewind's got you covered. So why not take a stroll down memory lane and subscribe?
No one can tell me what to do.
See you there. Catching Up is a pilot created by one of my YouTube peers, LS Mark, starring Michael Kovac and one of my besties Mackenzie Atwood as Clay and Rob. Two, friends? Who navigate the trials and tribulations of adolescence together. I definitely don't have as much to say about this pilot compared to I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl. It came out 6 months ago at the time of writing this video, so I feel like a lot of people voiced the main criticisms that Mark's already taken to heart. But there's still some things worth highlighting when it comes to the success of this pilot and how it was made. And I do have some suggestions that I think are worth throwing out there. Mark hyped up this pilot for a while, with illustrations of Rob and Clay circulating for years, which makes sense with this pilot being retooled a bunch since its initial conception in 2020. I don't really want a pocket watch, but whereas Kiana's experience in animation gave her pilot the edge, Mark's time on YouTube definitely went a long way in making this a reality, as he funded the pilot entirely on his own, something that's challenging for a lot of people. Animation is quite expensive, but long videos make an absurd amount of money on this platform, so all those rankings he did pilot definitely footed the bill. Not only that, but the reach he has on the internet allowed him to connect with the right talents to make this thing look as gorgeous as it is. The compositors especially deserve their flowers. He still did what he could on his own, such as the writing and storyboarding, and the production is using rigs instead of frame-by-frame hand-drawn animation, which I'm only pointing out to highlight that there are still compromises even when you may have better finances than the average animation fan logging to create a cartoon. He has an entire video about the production of the pilot that you guys can check out though, so let me switch gears and talk about the pilot itself, why it took off, and what it could improve on. Catching Up is a visual delight. Everything about this looks great. The character designs are pretty much what you would expect from Mark if you've been watching his channels for a few years. The designs being a blend of Fairly OddParents and Sonic. The Sonic influence especially is something I'm surprised we haven't seen more of in cartoons. We got close with Trick Moon, but then Cartoon Network rejected it and imploded. I think that's part of why this took off in the way that it did. We don't have that many talking animal cartoons around right now, aside from Bluey and the upcoming Lackadaisy. These kind of shows are right for making OCs, which in return can grow a fandom. Not to mention, if indie has taught me one thing, it's that if you can appeal to furries, they will do whatever they can to support your project to the best of their abilities. There's some real ones. If only my cartoon was about talking animals. This pilot is at its best when it leans into Mark's sense of humor. You can tell what kind of visual and audio gags amuses him in other shows or YouTube videos, and he's able to put a fun spin on them here. Rob interrogating Clay when he realizes he's drunk and briefly sounds as if he's underwater. Clay almost stepping on Roger Craig Smith's worm GF, or the close-up of the jacket. Moments like these genuinely get a laugh out of me and are the first things that come to mind when I think about this pilot. They stand out way more than other jokes that boil down to, awkward. Some of those got me, but they could have been dialed back. Most critiques about Catching Up boil down to the pacing issues, and it also being tonally confused, which I definitely think is a lot more egregious here than in I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl. I think they're in high school, but then they go to a club where people are drinking and gambling on a night that was meant to be exclusively for teens. It all definitely raises some questions, though I think a lot of the total confusion boils down to the fact that it feels relatively tame until we have moments like Rob talking about his bitches. I get not wanting to be too vulgar or mean-spirited, since a lot of adult animation tends to use that as a crutch, but when most of the characters in this thing are already acting like dickheads, it'd probably fit more if the dialogue was more akin to something like South Park, because as it stands, a lot of these characters talk like generic Y7 bullies or mean girls. But beyond that, I definitely think Catching Up could benefit from having a clearer focus. I think this pilot tries to tackle how awkward it can be to attend a high school party when you're a loner, but then it dips its toes into underage drinking and being strung along by girls who have no interest in you. And I think completely focusing on either of those two would have made for a much stronger episode. Either go all in on Rob being used because he's an oblivious sweet cinnamon roll, or Clay getting into alcohol in spite of the consequences. I think both of those are more relatable stories that don't get explored much in animated television, and they provide plenty of storytelling opportunities from the jump. The party premise for this kind of show probably should have been held off until more secondary characters were established with their own unique personalities, so that Rob and Clay had more characters to bounce off of in a unique way, instead of just a string of interactions with characters who seem like they're meant to fill out a background and have the occasional speaking role. It was kind of like if the Fairly OddParents episode A Wish Too Far, where Timmy uses magic to become popular, didn't have Chester, AJ, Trixie, or any of the popular kids, but instead the NPC cast the last season or two is composed of. When these aren't fleshed out characters with their own unique personalities and quirks, they're not gonna stick out to the audience. And the jokes are gonna feel generic because the characters they're interacting with are. I was surprised how subdued this pilot was, given that Mark's favorite shows tend to be the opposite. Not only could future episodes have faster pacing, but I want to see more of an escalation. I'm not saying they have to give regular show a run for its money, but just up the ante a little. You could see Rob going off on the two girls for having him carry the jacket around all night coming a mile away, and nothing really crazy happens after. I would have loved if Rob going off on the girls led to some jocks starting a fight, and although our leads are definitely going to get their ass kicked, they come out having a stronger bond and decide to spend the rest of the night gaming together or something. Maybe their peers even gain some respect for them since they actually tried to stand their ground. I do think the series might need some sort of gimmick, as that might be the big thing it's lacking right now. It doesn't even need to be something ungrounded like magic fairies or ghost powers. Somewhat grounded animated series like Edda and Eddie still have a gimmick with the scams. Home movies had a gimmick, you know, the home movies. Recess's gimmick was the hierarchy of the playground. There's just gotta be something with catching up that can cause everything to click as the pieces fall into place. What that is, I don't really know. I'm not Mark or a studio executive whose job is to help figure that stuff out. While it hasn't broken any new ground so far, the series still shows a lot of promise, and I have a feeling it'll improve with every episode that releases. So I look forward to the next installment. So with more indie pilots being released and met with millions of views, let's once again tackle that question, is indie the future? I've always been cautious to fully back this notion because animation pros have reinforced that it's not sustainable, and yeah, that's very true for its current state. Jellybox actually put out a great video about funding indie animation that you guys should check out after this video, but it should go without saying that the goal is to make it sustainable. And that's kind of already happening as we're seeing indie studios like Spindle Horse and Glitch get some incredible opportunities that were unheard of just a few years ago. And I'm sorry, but when these indie pilots and series are eclipsing studio-produced cartoons in both viewership and exposure, and I'm seeing Hot Topic decked out in merch of indie series, pretty much getting a full section near the registers, I need to be honest with myself. Studios will keep pumping out adaptations, spin-offs, and reboots to massive success. But the most viable path for original ideas right now is without a doubt going the indie route. Yes, it's risky. Yes, it's scary. It's time-consuming, and realistically, not every idea is going to succeed. Failure is an inevitability. Even indie series that are able to cross the finish line of production won't be met with the same level of attention as the pilots we talked about today. There are some indie series out there that I'm begging people to give more attention, like Sublo and Taking Mustard, or Monkey Wrench. My homie Skyward Wing actually released a pilot years ago that's on this channel you're watching right now that didn't get as much of a push by the algorithm. Amoda and Nepsin. I don't think it's indicative of the quality of these series. Luck just has a big part to play in all of this. Are there things you can do to set it up for success like we talked about today? Definitely. Maybe you already have a following, maybe you have some connections to some talented voice actors who can rope in their own following. But I feel as if that's true for the studio-produced cartoons as well, as evident with all the rejected pilots we've seen over the years, and quality cartoons that have come out, but didn't catch on for one reason or another. Indie just feels a lot scarier because it's typically coming out of a creator's own pocket, or relying on funding from ordinary people, instead of falling back on studio resources. Clearly, it's worth the gamble when there's indie series like the Amazing Digital Circus, a show that's gotten a Netflix deal, merch all across America, and pop-up shops in Japan as it's becoming a phenomenon over there. I can't help but be optimistic for indie and root for it to come on top when I'm seeing things like this. I mean, come on. Pomni was just on the storefront of Spirit Halloweens across the nation. Now she's on billboards alongside anime icons like Sukuna and Tanjiro. Episodes of the series are still getting tens of millions of views. It really has not slowed down. And that's just on YouTube. With the Netflix deal, a deal that allows Glitch to still retain the rights and post episodes on YouTube first, not only is it getting in front of more faces that may not have stumbled upon the series on YouTube, but it allows for the series to truly push the envelope. With Gooseworks implying that the next episode might be edited for YouTube in order to stay visible and monetized, but uncut over on Netflix, we're already seeing a huge benefit to the show being hosted on a major streaming service, aside from the assumption that they probably got a buttload of money from Netflix, which is gonna help fund more projects. Evading censorship makes its presence on Netflix feel all the more unique, and it makes me excited to see what'll happen for future Glitch series. Could we see Knights of Guinevere have censored episodes on YouTube with an uncut experience on streaming? Knowing how grotesque the mind of Dana Terrace can get, that might be necessary. Will Glitch get to a point where Netflix commissions an animated series from them? At that point, that project wouldn't be indie, but it'd still be the result of a partnership that stemmed from indie animation. Something special is happening in the indie landscape, and I want to be a part of it. How could any creative not feel inspired to throw their hat into the ring after all of the wins we've seen? At the end of the day, I'm hoping we can get enough indie series going with sustainable, smooth productions that it'll light a fire under the asses of corporations who are basically letting a bulk of their animation studios collect dust as they only make sequels, spin-offs, and reboots, leading to an animation boom where original ideas are thriving in both the indie space and corporate space. Wishful thinking? Maybe, but this is an era where the impossible is suddenly possible, so never say never. But as always, these are just my thoughts, and I would love to hear
Amora, come in! Amora! I got what we came for.
Nepson, I'm on my way. You need to get out of here.
What? I can't understand you.
You need to get out of there now. You need to get out of there.
Amora! Amora! Amora!
Nepson, come in, Nepson.
Hand over the key.
Oh, you mean this key? Well, come and get it.
Whoa, easy there, buddy.
Finally got a hold of you. Are you alright?
Peachy!
The boat rental's gonna expire soon and I don't want to pay any late fees. How far are you?
I'll be right there.
I'm getting a weird signal coming from behind you.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, there should be a window a few feet from where you are.
Pero no podía quedarme de brazos cruzados, por eso te hice este video.
Hey!
Necesito que veas paso a paso la decisión que tomé.
I'm trying to hear my stories! Nipson,
Yeah,
do you have the key?
was there really any doubt?
Maybe a little. Hurry, let's get going.
Moda, start the boat and get ready to go.
What's going on?
Don't give up, do you?
Come on! Looks like you had some trouble getting that.
No trouble at all.